Hello and welcome back to another episode of Chat to JP, the place where here on LinkedIn and YouTube I talk to you about things to do with AI. And if you haven't met with me before, I'm JP. I'm James Poulter, CEO and one of the co-founders at Vixen Labs. Now, yesterday, as I'm sure it's pretty much now impossible to have avoided, you'll know that it was WWDC, and you'll know that Apple have launched a headset. But that's not exactly what I'm here to talk to you about. Okay, if you want to go and read teardowns about what the new Vision Pro headset is, go and do so elsewhere. What I want to talk to you about is some of the conversational AI conversations that have been happening since WWDC announcements as of yesterday, and more importantly, the things that Apple wasn't saying, which I think are just as important as the things that they were saying. So let's get into it, shall we? Okay, the first thing to say is that I think most people will not find this a great surprise, but one of the first announcements that came out of yesterday's WWDC related to the world of voice and conversational tech is that Siri no longer is going to need to be invoked with a hey at the start. Now, we've seen this move by a number of the other players in the space of being able to just use the wake word, in this case of Siri, almost automatically. And this is obviously really important for continued conversations. And if you're going to be talking to a device like the Vision Pro headset, where you're going to be talking to it all of the time to control it because it doesn't have any text input through a physical keyboard or a pointer, it's just hand gestures and voice, you're going to need to talk to it quite often. And so as a result, they are dropping the need for a hey as a part of the invocation in the wake word. Now, this is probably, as I say, not surprising, but I think is interesting because it points to the future direction, I think, of a lot of the other technology that we're going to see come from Apple and others. This dropping of a wake word, it means that you're going to be able to jump straight into using these things in a lot more, kind of streamlined way. You're not going to have to kind of think about it so often. And the other main thing that it also enables is continued conversation, which is the other major feature change for Siri coming out of this year's WWDC, that you basically can ask it for something and then not have to re-invoke it. You can just carry on talking to it and the microphone will stay present across all devices and know that you're trying to keep talking to it and then continue to perform those actions, which makes that whole ongoing dialogue a lot better. Now, there was no mention throughout any of yesterday's coverage of anything to do with things like large language models or other AI machine learning kind of topics. It was mentioned in very passing, and as you can see here from this coverage from The Verge, there is, I think, a lot of reasons why Apple are not using the words AI and have kept using things like machine learning and others. For the past few years, Apple's entire shtick really around the future of machine learning and more artificial intelligence more generally is around privacy. They've been pushing this privacy train for a long way. It first started with the Secure Enclave, which is their dedicated service chip that sits on the iPhone, originally developed for Face ID, so that whenever you're using the dot projector on the front of your iPhone to capture your face, it's not actually sending that information to the cloud. And it's been expanded now to use a bunch of other things. And of course, I think Apple knows full well that the minute you start using terms like AI, and particularly when we've seen a lot of the pushback on devices like Alexa and Google Assistant, that these things are always listening to you, it instantly kind of raises that threshold of worry amongst people. Now, the minute you're going to start putting a device on your face and wearing it the whole time, as with the Vision Pro headset, then of course people are going to get more worried about that. And so the minute you start introducing mentions of artificial intelligence, that's going to drive people a little bit more up the fear factor. So that's, I think, one of the first big reasons is that Apple are shying away from using a lot of talk about AI. But it's important to know that there is actually a bunch of AI kind of going on underneath the hood. Yesterday, amongst other things, which maybe got overshadowed a little bit by the Vision Pro headset launch, is a lot of changes coming to iOS and iPadOS, as well as also macOS. I'm going to say OS a lot in this video. And those changes are actually predominantly driven by a lot of machine learning. Now, admittedly, a lot of this is going on device, which is particularly important if you want to keep that privacy bar kind of held high. And of course, we know that a lot of this natural language processing, neural networks, and large language models are gradually getting smaller and smaller, so we can begin to do things on device rather than having to have a constant cloud connection. One of the things that Apple announced yesterday in iOS 17 is the new Journal app that is going to be coming to all iOS devices as a built-in app later this year when iOS 17 rolls out in the autumn. And this is requiring a lot of machine learning to help you basically come up with writing suggestions. Throughout the day, your journal app will be able to do things like analyze your app's usage. It's going to be able to look at like the photos that you've taken with the camera app, perhaps notes that you have put into the Notes app, and various other social signals that run across the iOS ecosystem, and basically allow you to go and get prompts for what you should write. And a lot of machine learning is going to have to go on in the background here, or AI, in things like being able to do vision learning from all of the photos that you've taken, object recognition, scanning things like your emails and text messages so that you know kind of personal events, looking at your calendar. And all of this is going to have to be processed by a lot of large language model processing, as well as also neural networks. Now, again, they're saying that a lot of this is going to run on device. It's going to use the Apple built-in neural engines that are sitting on top of the M2 and M1 processor chips that sit within the device. So a lot of this happening there, and anything that does have to be cloud connected is obviously going through Apple's end-to-end encryption, which has been one of the big selling points of iMessage over the past couple of years, of course. So it's not to say that there isn't any AI going on under the hood within iOS 17. In fact, there's actually quite a lot of it going on, but it's not the kind of AI that we are so used to. And that is the difference, I believe, mostly between Apple and Google right now. So why does all of this matter? And, as I mentioned, I didn't want to major on the Vision Quest headset, but it's impossible not to kind of talk about it a little bit. So let's just touch on it as we finish out. This new device is going to be quite groundbreaking. I mean, it's everywhere at the moment, as you've probably seen. The ability to have this kind of headset on, it's $3,500, and that's just for starters before we've added on any dongles, which you can bet there's going to be dongles. I mean, like, Apple's entire business model right now is to create new classes of devices to sell us dongles, right? I mean, if you've got a MacBook, you know the woes, and don't get me started on the lightning cable. But this is what we're seeing, that they are starting with this whole new category of headset device at a very high end and very high price point. But one big thing we know is that Apple is very good at creating whole new categories and training us over time to adopt this type of behavior. It's what we've seen for a long time in the world of the AirPods. I love this chart. It's a bit outdated now, but I think that the point stands true, is that for years, we've been walking around with the AirPods in our ears, being trained to talk out loud to these devices. And that's where all of that programming, that natural programming into us as humans, has come to full effect, so that we can get ready for something that might look like us wearing a computer on our faces and engaging with these virtual avatars, which, I mean, I'm still a little bit freaked out about. It's going to take a while for me to get used to this. If you're wondering the question of, am I going to buy one? I think the answer is going to be no. I think the answer is going to be no. I've tried a lot of these VR devices and I've held off for a long time. The Meta Quest 3 may be a kind of easier stepping stone coming out in a couple of months' time, retailing at a much more affordable $500 price point. So we will wait and see. But I want to know from you, would you be spending this kind of money? What do you think about Apple's AI status in the player? Does the privacy angle appeal to you, or do you not really care? Would you rather that you have all of your data accessed by the cloud anyway? So why not just add what's on your phone? Let me know in the comments below. Would love to get your thoughts. So AI is here to stay when it comes to Apple, but maybe not quite as we know it. And thankfully, we don't have to say hey to Siri anymore. All right, thanks so much for joining me. If you want to get in touch, then you can do that in all the usual places. The best place is probably directly below this video in the comments, but if not, head to @JamesPolter on other social networks and connect with me there, and follow over on the YouTube channel. And I'll see you very soon for another episode of Chat to JP. Thanks so much. Have a happy Siri evening. Bye.